My name is Samuel Nguiffo.
Mm-hmm.
I come from Cameroon. I'm the director of the Center for Environment and Development in Cameroon.
Okay. What is your work? What do you do?
On a daily basis, we look at how to best recognize and protect community rights.
Mm-hmm.
In forest management, in the extractive sector, in the large infrastructure projects, we try to make sure that all these development projects will not affect community rights. And we also look at policies, government policies, trying to make sure that the government policies take into account the rights of the communities, especially the right to land and the right to resources.
So how is it, it seems like a silly question, but,
yes.
but tell us, how would this play out? What happens typically, and what is the response, and where do you fit in?
What happens often is that the government grants concessions to companies, mining concessions, land concessions, space for infrastructures, and these spaces are granted to companies without taking into account the fact that communities live there or community use the space. So they are totally overlooked. And it is important for us to be next to the communities and to understand what are the problems and go back to the companies or to the government and say, oh, look at those people, you can't do it that way, you have to do it differently. On a daily basis, we also look at government policies. Like now, for example, the government is planning to change their forestry law. And our question will be how to best take into account the rights, the need of the communities in the new forestry law. The same will happen in the near future with the land law. And again, we will be looking at how to best take into account the rights of the communities. I have to say that these things are not taken for granted. Often the companies, often the government only think in terms of economics. How much money this will bring to the government and how to best organize it for money to flow in the public treasure, and the communities are not taken into account.
So what happens when the companies move in for forestry, or for agriculture, for mining? What happens to the communities that were there?
Often you have some communities are settled. So when the companies come, you have to meet them. And you can't just say they have to go. But by taking the resources, by occupying the space, you basically tell them to go without having to say it. They need to go somewhere else to find the resources. Other communities are indigenous communities, they are not settled. They are nomadic in the forest. So when the companies come, they don't see them. And they consider that there's nobody here. And when they start their activities, they really affect the capacity of the communities to access the resources. So again, by their action, they push the communities far away. And this is what happens every day.
And where, if it happens to a community, how do you respond?
How do we respond? Often what happens, we go to the company and we say there is a problem. And sometimes the company will say, okay, we will do something to make sure that we don't affect them more than what has happened already. Sometimes we go to the government, but the government says the law doesn't ask us to do what you are asking for. So there's no problem. We are fully complying with the law. Some companies say the same, and this is why it's so important to change the laws and the policies, especially in a context where the government has signed and ratified some international conventions recognizing the rights of communities and indigenous communities, right to land, right to life, right to resources, and we try to make sure that the government will stand to their commitments. Sometimes we have to talk to the UN about it.
And how does RRI, your work with RRI, come into play? How does that help?
We were already working on some issues related to community rights. The the fact that RRI is a large coalition bringing together people, organizations from so many different regions was important for us because it's a place where we can learn a lot from the experiences of other organizations from other countries, other continents. And it's also a place where we can share, where we can raise some questions, and where we can have an influence because it's a group. It's larger than a single organization. So they have a lot more influence. In my country, but also in other countries, they know many more people. So people tend to listen to them much more than to listen to a national NGO. So this was very helpful. It helped providing us with information, providing us with intelligence, and it helped us using them to fight the battles that are considered to be our battles.
What other countries have similar situations that you've been able to learn?
We were able to learn different things in different countries. Some countries in Latin America have been able to put in place small-scale community enterprises in the forest. Those enterprises work quite well, like Guatemala, for example, and this is where we want to go in Central African countries. Indigenous communities in Latin America were able to get their rights recognized, very well mapped and recognized and protected by the state. We want to know what they did, how they did it, because this could be of interest for the communities where we live. In some places also, in Asia, for example, NGOs were able to have working relationship with their government. They can talk, they can disagree, but they sit at the table. And we want to learn from that also, where we are. We want to know how to disagree with the government and still sit at the table. Some of the companies operating where we are come from Asia, and we want to know from the NGOs there, what are their records. They come from Asia, they have been operating in Asia, now they move to Central Africa. Somebody has to tell us who they are, how to work with them, this type of things. This is why it's so important for us.
Does it help? Do your partners in Asia help pressure the same company to stop activities in Central Africa?
Partners in Asia, partners in Europe and the US talk to some of the companies coming to Africa, and this has happened again recently, because the company come in a different name. We don't know them, we don't know who they are totally new for us. But some of those partners know the company and can talk to them to let them know that they are being watched. And I think this is also very important because they start being very careful and they listen to what we are saying.
That's great. What's you see in 5 years? Are things getting better? Are things getting worse?
Challenges are getting more and more important. 5 years ago, it was 2008, the financial crisis, the food crisis, the increase in the price of oil, increase in the demand of mineral. This has had an impact in Central African countries. We had hunger strikes, but we also had a lot of companies coming to Central Africa looking for land. And because they are taking land, communities are suffering restriction in access to land. We have many more companies looking for oil because the price of oil is so high. And again, they look for oil on community lands. A lot of companies coming for mining, again, on community land. So everybody basically is coming to the place, trying to have a share of the cake. And those living there are totally overlooked. This is the challenge. Our challenge is how to best organize the recognition and the protection of the right of communities against all those people coming in now, invited by the government.
And does efforts to help stop deforestation, you know, not just RED, but the environmental movement, does that help you? Is that just pressure from a different space?
All these issues are very much connected. Mining happens in forest. And to get to the mine, you need to clear the forest, clear cut.
Yeah.
Palm oil needs the same ecosystem with the forest. It grows in the forest. So you need to clear cut the forest to put palm oil again. Logging, well, happens in the forest. So if you want to address all these issues, you don't have to look at them in a very sectoral way. They are not isolated at all. You have to look at forest, the land, and look at community rights. It's just one issue, exactly one issue.
Okay. I think we're good. Yeah. Okay. And then just to record the permissions, you're comfortable and okay with RRI using this video for promotional purposes?
No problem.
Okay.
I agree.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate